Welcome to everyone in Canada and, of course, lawyers hired by whatever Muslim Brotherhood front group that need to watch this show to sue me now, the past, the present, the future. All right. Big story this week, I think, is the fact that we've all agreed that it was not a crazy idea to state that, hey, this virus that's around the world that started in Wuhan is very similar to a virus they're researching in the Wuhan virology lab. In fact, they're researching coronavirus related to the specific bat, and this specific virus that came from this specific area is now all across the world. That was a conspiracy theory until, well, like right now. This is, so what was once a conspiracy theory, because there was absolutely no evidence to suggest that the laboratory in China, in the specific province of China, where the virus leaked out of, the Wuhan virology lab, which was studying the specific virus that leaked out, there was no evidence that this virus had come from Wuhan. Okay, now maybe there wasn't specific evidence, let's say, of like, okay, that's a bad way to do it. Maybe there wasn't the type of evidence the media was looking for. So when I've been looking, Snopes has just had to do a retraction, and I've been pulling up articles all day, and I got this one from Snopes. It's the first one that comes up, like, here's why scientists think the coronavirus wasn't made in the lab. It's from July 13th, 2020. Okay. And essentially the misleading game that they do in this is they say the reason why they've debunked it is there's no evidence that this virus was like genetically manufactured by the Chinese scientists, which is kind of true, but also highly misleading. So you have Fauci, who just came out that we do need to be looking into gain-of-function research. And what gain-of-function research is you take an existing virus and then you take it in sort of a laboratory setting and you try and manipulate it, right, to the point where it's more and more, let's say, virulent and dangerous and stronger, right, so that you can manufacture potential cures to it at its worst form, right? So you take a virus, let's say you take the common cold, or you take, what's a good virus? The Liberal Party, right? You take the Liberal Party in the 1990s and you put it in the lab to get to its most virulent form, and then you get something like Justin Trudeau, right? And then you have a vaccine or whatever developed for the current Liberal virus, which is under John Chrétien, which just gives you a little bit of a cold, some mild debt, but no lasting damage, right? But if it morphs into the Trudeau, right, you have a vaccine, because then it's going to destroy the world. Okay, this is gain-of-function research, essentially, right? Now, what they did to disprove the lab leak hypothesis is they said, well, there's no evidence that it was created in a lab. So you have to understand what they're saying here, and what the way they validated created in the lab is they took basically the premise that a scientist sort of created it out of thin air. Like, I'll take one adenine here, one guanine, cytosine, adenine, thymine, adenine, like literally put it together, protein by protein by protein by amino acid, created this virus, right, in this super thing, and then throw it out. That was debunked because there was no evidence of that happening. However, that's not how you would create a virus. That's maybe how people would create a virus in friggin' a movie or a cartoon show. It's not how you would create a virus if you were actually doing it on planet Earth in real time. So that was the great deception that underlined all of the mainstream media and the fact checkers and the Fauciites going forward. Because when Donald Trump said a year ago that we're looking into to this, it immediately became haram. Okay, so I would like to point out that the National Telegraph, over a year ago, there's an article on the National Telegraph going over the evidence that this potentially came out of a lab. So this is another reason why, I think you're all here because you don't love mainstream media, but I'm going to give some credit to alternative media, specifically the National Telegraph, which over a year ago put together, I think, a very legitimate, well-thought-out article about the lab leak hypothesis. Okay. Legit question. When do you believe our dear leader, the Prime Minister of Canada, peace be upon him, will jump into this Wuhan lab leak virus bandwagon? That is a very good question. And the answer is, one, it is definitively, absolutely proven beyond a doubt. He will be one of the last ones in. Because you have, you have Biden, who's actually said something today. So we'll know a lot more in a week from now, but CNN joined in today. Biden said he wants to, look into it. like, so for the feminist leader, by the way, I love that description of, and peace be upon him too. I would say absolute very last, and I'll get to, because he is a total shill for China. He has shown no backbone. Whereas he actually is someone who will not like stand up for China. And you can say like Joe Biden might also be bought and paid for by China, but he's an American. And as an American, he has more of a patriotic duty and sort of a pathology to sort of want to be seen as a stronger, more independent thinker. And that's good. Whereas Justin Trudeau's sort of Canadian, blah, 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 Canadianness, that will, I think, delay him. But we have the now point where Fauci's on board. Fauci's on team. All the evidence, most of the evidence points to it came out of lab. Now, it actually, like, is there like a super definitive proof here? It came out of a lab. We have definitive proof. No, we don't have that. We've just actually disproved every other theory. So the original theory that we were all supposed to go on to now was that this had this had developed from a bat or a pangolin, and we were just supposed to say, you know what, the Chinese, they eat a lot of stuff. They eat a lot of weird things, and that might have been the reason why that this virus leaked out. Who knows? Okay, so that was sort of the thing we were supposed to push is okay, but now that's been debunked. It did not come from someone eating bat soup. This is not a bat soup problem. This is not Chinese just eating weird animals. This looks like it's highly likely that the Wuhan virology lab in China, in the province of China, created a Chinese virus in China out of the Chinese province of Wuhan in a Chinese virology lab that was researching the very specific strain of COVID that came out of the lab in China from China that China spread throughout the world to infect us with the Chinese virus. Wait, sorry, don't call it the Chinese virus. Call it, the virus of love, and the Indian variant, and the England variant, and the Brazilian variant, but never a Chinese variant. Okay. Okay, we have a question. Is this where all the cool Albertans hang? Yes. Fact check true. That is where it is. So Karen, I believe it was created in the lab, intentional release, totally believe this. So I'll break down the statement. Part A, B, and C. C is your opinion. Part A, I think there's a 99% certainty you can say that with, maybe 95%. I'm very certain you're right here. Now, intentional release, we don't know why. We don't know why it's released. We don't know if it was intentionally released. We don't know if it was accidentally released. But what we do know is sort of, I'll add an addendum to this. Once it was released, once it was out there in the ether, right? Intentionally, accidentally, we don't know how it got out. Now, you can say intentional, you can say unintentional. What we do know, though, is once it was out there, there was an intentional international spread by the CCP. So I think that's worse. So Karen, I'm just sort of debating semantics or going over them with the initial release. We could say maybe it came out accidentally, but it's irrelevant because once it came out accidentally, they totally covered it up until it got to the point where they realized, okay, we can use this as sort of a bioweapon, an economic weapon, right? To shut down the world's economy, to get the people off the streets of Hong Kong, right? So they did use it intentionally for political purposes. So the CCP must be sanctioned and hopefully destroyed over this. I mean, this is the enemy of humanity. This is where we're going. 99% of the world knows where it came from. The other 1% don't want to piss off their CCP masters. John Cena will be sent to your house to re-educate you. So you will be getting a celebrity visit. John Cena will be coming over, and you will be re-educated. There was a great Babylon Bee article. The Bee is like the best news source there is right now, other than the National Telegraph. Go subscribe to the National Telegraph, like it. You actually don't stay here on this broadcast, but remember to react to the broadcast. It really helps me out with the share, and like, and subscribe to the whatever. Push buttons. Push buttons, it helps the algorithm, and the algorithm saves all our lives. Okay, push all the buttons. Now, what needs to happen to China is massive economic sanctions. We have to take a shot at China for this. Now, with no Donald Trump being in, it's going to be much harder. Is Justin Trudeau going to do anything to protect the international community? No. This is where we get to this is where we get to the problem of Trump is gone. So we need to sanction China. We need to, because their economy, I think someone's identified it right here, is like, I think you did. Look how quickly China recovered. Did they really recover that quickly? Well, they just didn't care about human life, right? So while we were trying to save every single life and save everyone's grandmother, your grandmother's 97, well, we need to make sure she makes it to 98, no matter what, shut down the economy, even though there's no proof of that it will save anyone. This is insane nonsense, right? But China just said, you know what? We can suffer a few losses here and we'll keep the economy going because our economy keeping to go will help us gain global influence. Right? So the Chinese doing the thing trying their Global Belt project, which Pretty Upala covered quite well for the National Telegraph. If you want to look that up. What the Chinese are trying to do is basically buy off the world and sort of put a belt around the world and sort of control infrastructure and go into Africa and weaponizing human aid for actual political purposes. Like this is the problem. And so when Dustin says they paid off, when you make the claim they paid off the politicians, I actually think it's a lot worse than that. I think they didn't even need paying off. This is the problem that we have, is that, okay, I have problem. I'm not saying no conspiracies are right, all right, and that I don't adopt any conspiracies. But the conspiracies I tend to reject are conspiracies of mass competence. Okay, so when they say, if you're saying, these people are in a room, like if it's the Bilderbergs or these group of people are manipulating events, so carefully over a long time span to get the results they want. No, I don't believe anyone is that competent. Okay. I just spent hours trying to file a friggin' paperwork with the government today. I don't believe anyone in the government is competent enough to do that. Now, am I saying that, these groups that have massive billions of dollars in influence, and am I saying George Soros isn't up to no good? No. I'm actually saying that the way to stop these global conspiracies is actually not on the sort of individual leadership level. And the reason why a lot of these sort of conspiracies are so successful, let's say, is because there's a lot of social entropy already from the institutions and political corruption, right? There's a lot of waves and entropatic waves that are sort of making it that these things are happening. So, when coronavirus hits, we don't need to actually bribe every single politician to shut everyone down. We already have these mechanisms in place where every politician is so afraid of the Twitter mob. And the Twitter mob has been indoctrinated by decades of going through the ringer of our institutions, which have been systematically corrupted by one hand or another, whether it was millions of dollars from the Iranian government or Qatar or Saudi Arabia back in the day, or importing presents from the Soviets. We have this conflux of Islamists and communists who have been pumping money into our educational systems to undermine the West. That's why people get dumber going to universities these days. And then you have them going through these systems. You don't need the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, or anyone really when these things happen to sort of manipulate to create these negative outcomes. We have so much institutional ideological corruption that when anything kind of happens, right, it hits this wave of entropy where bad things happen. Like our politicians will just shut down the entire world out of fear and not be able to think. And they're not, and this is really a case of not hyper competence by a specific few to undermine the masses. It's mass incompetence. So conspiracies of competence, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just, if they are right, I think the better explanation is not extreme competence of a specific few, but the extreme incompetence of many is a much more likely cause in spirit. Okay. Let's go through. Where did the funding come from to run the lab and their project to create the virus? The international community. We all funded it. Now, again, I'll give some context here. Okay, so am I in favor of us funding with taxpayers as the West and other countries international virology research labs? Yes, I actually do think it is one of the things the global community should do. Now, in China is a different question, but we want, as you see, these diseases will cross borders, right? Diseases, especially respiratory diseases, will go on. And John is right here. Justin McBlackface, Captain Blackface, using our tax dollars to fund the lab. Okay, so yes, we should be funding virology labs across the world. Because think of it, there are less fortunate countries, but they still have people there. Those people can get sick and diseases can spread in there. So should we be funding virology research labs in Botswana? Yes, it's something the international community should do, because we want a competent medical system in Botswana that if something bad starts to happen, they have the medical resources to tamp it down so it doesn't leak outside their borders and then become a Canadian, American, and European problem. This makes a lot of sense. So I've said there is a purpose for a potential organization, institution like the World Health Organization, a global community that monitors international health, that can help us coordinate health responses from different countries. This is something that is quite valuable. However, the World Health Organization becomes a detriment to the Global Health Organization when it is institutionally controlled by dictatorial powers. So if the World Health Organization was really interested in the organizing to create a better health in the world, I'd have no problem with it. But the World Health Organization is clearly a proxy of the Communist Chinese Party, the Chinese Communist Party, right? It's clearly a proxy of the CCP. They shut down, they wouldn't admit that Taiwan's a country. By the way, I'd like to say, I like to apologize to Taiwan and China for misspeaking this entire time. People are asking, is Taiwan a country? What's in China? And I just want to clarify, Taiwan is a country and China is not a country. From now on, China will be referred to as the province of Western Taiwan. So this virus started in a lab in the province of Western Taiwan. Okay. So you have the World Health Organization, which is utterly corrupt, and it undermines our global health response because it was lying on behalf of the government of the province of Western Taiwan. So when the WHO says we have no evidence of human-to-human transmission, in January 2020, when they had evidence of human-to-human transmission, well, then, you're undermining our ability to find, to stop this virus. When the WHO says, there's the lab leak hypothesis is bunk, right? But we actually have evidence of it. They're undermining our ability to respond effectively to a virus, right? So the World Health Organization is now counterproductive to world health. So I can make a case for funding virology labs across the world because health is something we all have invested in. But when evil countries like the province of Western Taiwan, which is not really a country, it's just the province of Western Taiwan, when they start to influence and corrupt these organizations where they can't say things that are true, and if it undermines the values or the goals of the CCP, then they become more dangerous. And what about Tetros? He should be in prison, not the head of WHO. Yeah, he was a communist, and he propped up the government of Eritrea. Okay, so this is a support of the government of Eritrea. Eritrea is just like Black North Korea. Okay, that's the best way of describing it. It's in East Africa. I mean, we have the map, so we can just point to it. Ethiopia is here. There's Eritrea right near. It's just a little country here. It is like the most repressed country in the entire world. Maybe North Korea, maybe Eritrea. Like, these are the two worst countries in the world. Tetros was a supporter of the Eritrean government. He should be in a position to tell no one anything about anything. Okay, so this is another problem with corrupt, horrific bureaucrats in the international community. Like, this is why I don't respect the international community, international precedents, international law, all of this type of stuff. It's all so bunk and nonsense, right? And the international law argument always being weaponized against Israel. The only country that complies with international law, which I think international law is a silly concept anyway, but this is just how ridiculous it gets with the international community. Okay? I'll just pull this one up. Random guy. WHO is corrupt and lied about the Wuhan lab leak theory. Yes, fact check, true. And this undermined our ability to fight the virus. So I think we all understand that we could be in favor of a global health organization that synergizes the responses between different countries, but that's not what it does. It's clearly undermined us. I'm going to, international law is enforced by the US and NATO anyway, so actually international law is literally enforced by no one. But yes, you can't go against it's a silly concept. No matter how you do it, like, it's all here. Yeah. China's Western Taiwan. Watch the virus coming your way now. Yeah, I don't think this show is going to be pushed out in China. Maybe there's a bunch of Uyghur slaves that are being forced to watch this show right now. Maybe that's where the Muslim Brotherhood offshoots its legal work too. Just a bunch of slaves. Muslim slaves are watching me to search for defamation. There's a bunch of Muslim slaves in a concentration camp in China. It's like fact checking everything I say to see if it was okay. All right. Let's bring this one up. Our entire federal government is corrupt, along with our premiers. We all see the problems and known solutions. Check out CCP, Dave Brockman, the only option. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that I mean, this is right. I mean, we have massive corruption with the politicians, massive corruption in our premiers. And it's not just corruption. And I'm not going to debate you on the fact that there is massive corruption. I'm going to add to this. It is corruption and cowardice. Right? So we have politicians that are utter cowards for the most part. We have no one with the sort of moral fortitude to stand up to the mob and say no. Right? So like Texas just said, you know what, screw this. We're going life back to normal. And their rates are going down. And their vaccination rates aren't even that high. That it's like, oh, well, the increased access to vaccines are going whatever. Right? And then the Canada thing is like basically saying until 70 to 75% of people get vaccinated, we can't do this. So we're just going to cudgel people into getting a vaccine that's still under emergency authorization and not even emergency use. Like, this is not the way to win over the vaccine hesitant crowd. Right? That's, this is not how you do it. Right? And I've said, like, I'll get the vaccine. I'm actually getting it on Friday. So I'll be dead by next Wednesday. If you guys think I'm going to die of the vaccine, well, then make sure to like this video, because it'll be the last video ever coming up before I get a 5G upgrade. So this is the last one. My DNA will not be altered. I'm gonna okay. I'll do this. What do you think of Nick Fuentes' America First? Do we have to contain Israel and defend Israeli views? He seems pretty anti-Semitic to me, even though he claims he isn't. Okay, so Nick Fuentes is an anti-Semite. He is a Holocaust denier, or like, he tried to disprove the Holocaust with cookies in an oven theory. It was stupid. Now, this is the problem with the America First movement. In general, there's two America First and Canada First movements. The one that I sort of subscribe to and a lot of subscribe to, like, I'm fine with Canada being Canada First, America being America First, in the sense that, that's logical. Our interests should be first. I hate the movement when it becomes isolationist, reactionary, and ethno-nationalist, which is where I think Fuentes and his fans are. So, for example, like, it's like, do we have to contain Israel and defend Israeli views? Like, contain Israel? Like, what do you, like, that's just nonsensical. Israel is contained. Israel's fighting a protracted defensive war. Like, and America, like, when they fund Israel, like, the American aid to Israel needs to be understood, because it's different than every other foreign aid. If America were to give $1 billion in foreign aid to, let's say, Egypt or Ethiopia or any other country, they just give them $1 billion and those countries do with it what they want. Israel's foreign aid from America is basically a voucher for American weapons. So the military aid given to Israel, if America gives Israel $2 billion, it's like 1.95 billion of that has to be spent on American weapons. So it's a voucher for them to buy American weapons. And what America gets out of this is it keeps their military industrial complex. They get fed on this. But the other stuff is Israel will then innovate on that technology. So the military partnership is, if Israel innovates a weapon, right? So they have the most advanced tanks, right? Especially for sand and desert warfare, are Israelis. It's a big reason why, the Americans were able to just blow away Saddam Hussein's tank forces in Desert Storm. Like, the Israelis just gave them, desert fighting technology. So when they go to the Middle East, all the weapon, like the ability to shoot, have a gun shoot around the corner. A lot of American military innovations actually were made by Israel due to American aid. Now, we could talk about ending the cycle of aid to them and the Palestinians and all that. That's another thing. But in terms of the Fuentes stuff, Fuentes, that type of America First, it doesn't take into account that having a presence on the world stage is actually in your interest. If you completely retract and are totally isolationist, you can be taken advantage of, right? So if America needs to be out in the world protecting its interests and the world's interests, and the world needs America protecting America's interests, because America is much better than everyone else. America allows free trade to happen, right? If we just let the inmates run the asylum, and China totally takes the South China Sea like they want to and will be able to do if America backs down, well, then all trade is then controlled by Chinese. That goes, or literally half of world trade, right? Let's say Israel loses its war, we get to blow Israel off the map, right? Well, then the Straits of Hormuz, the Straits of Tehran, the Suez Canal, all of those can be blockaded and knocked off by random despots within the area, right? You saw what happened when the ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. All the memes, but trade was shut down. So America's interests allow international trade to flow, right? The spice must flow. And because international trade flows, America gets much richer. Also, everyone else in the world gets much richer. So to say America first and Canada first isn't inherently racist. Like, I'm Canada first. I believe America should be America first. Like, I think it's healthy that, I think it's like, let's say I'm Canadian Prime Minister. I would rather know that the American president's interest, number one, is America, because that makes them easier to deal with. You know how to bargain, right? Okay, America's your number one interest. Now, it doesn't mean everything you have to do for America. Like, I can argue it's in American interest to not put tariffs on Canadian softwood lumber because blah, 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 trade and blah, blah, blah. And we can go over this, right? And it's in Canada's interest to have great relations with the rest of the world. Canada, because we are sort of a moral superpower, or used to be before Trudeau, we actually gained international credibility and access to high-level trade deals and the ability to sort of negotiate in international commerce at a much higher level because of our respected diplomacy in both Europe, America, and the Middle East. So being part of the world and being a world player actually had some major Canadian benefits. Now, Justin Trudeau doesn't do any of this. He just claims to be a global citizen and all this different stuff. So it's, it's a bit more complicated. Okay. Let's bring this one up. Let's do a Saskatchewan question. Premier Wallace of Saskatchewan is literally vilifying anyone that chooses not to vaccinate. His threat is, if you want your freedoms back, get vaccinated. What? Yeah, I hate this. I absolutely hate this. And listen, like, I think in terms of short-term security, these vaccines are actually pretty good in at least short-term side effects and safety. I think we've seen that. I'm not to say no one has experienced any vaccine side effects. That's not it. I've talked about vaccine side effects before, but in terms of safety, of short-term safety, yeah. However, we don't have any sort of long-term studies, and we just don't on any of this. So I think I've always believed in the vaccine conversation. You will catch more flies with honey than vinegar here. And well, I hate this push, because a lot of this push of like vilifying the anti-vax people is like to score points with the woke or the establishment. Now, there's a big difference to me between someone who is anti-vax 3 years ago, talking about how the measles vaccine is murder and all this, and like, you're allowed your opinions, but like, listen, measles vaccines, yellow fever vaccines, they've all been tested and retested, and we have decades of scientific literature on their efficacy and all that, right? If you're going to certain parts, you should get a yellow fever vaccine. Certain parts, you need a malaria vaccine. A meningococcal meningitis vaccine can save your life. We have long-term data on all of this. Now, there's a new brand of people who are skeptical specifically of this COVID vaccine for good reason. This is the first time we've tried an mRNA, protein spike vaccine. And I've been saying, if this technology proves to be very safe and effective, that's a great thing, because we'll be able to manufacture vaccines a lot quicker now. But once you start to force people to vaccinate on a new type of vaccine, this is pushing a big ethical and moral boundary that I'm not okay with, right? And I think a lot of the hesitancy. Now, there's people who will always be, anti-vax, and were anti-vax 10 years ago, and they're going to be anti-vax 10 years from now, and you're just not going to change your mind on this. Okay, fine. But there's a lot more people growing to the side of hesitancy towards this specific vaccine, and a lot of it is off the very, very true heuristic that you shouldn't trust this government, that this government and the health officials have lied to you about this vaccine before. They've lied to you about, this virus before. So you're being asked to trust health officials, government officials, and experts who have explicitly lied to you or been objectively proven wrong on this issue. I mean, we're just talking about the lab leak hypothesis, and they're saying you have to take a vaccine which is still under emergency authorization. So I've been against this, against the fourth vaccine. I think people in category, like, we are kind of pretending that so there's two categories of, let's say, the anti-vaxxer I outlined. The one who's there 5 years ago, who's no vaccines, whatever, GMOs are bad, whatever. Right? Then there's a new, which is like, I've looked at the data on coronavirus, and I don't really trust this, and what's a spike protein, and this isn't just an inert disease. Okay, what's this? Blah, blah, blah. Right? That's A and B. And I think B is the much bigger category. What the politicians are doing is pretending everyone is a category A anti-vaxxer and treating it that way. And they're refusing to acknowledge that category B, the sort of legitimate hesitancy, exists. And I've been saying the way you quell vaccine hesitancy is you can only deal with B, because there's nothing you can do with A. Okay, you deal with B, and the way you do that is, I say, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. You do not force them, you do not coerce them. You would say, hey, we hope you do it, but you stop talking about vaccine passports. You just maybe talk about the efficacy of it. You're very open and transparent with the data. Don't lie, don't belittle. And then if you do that, I think you could reduce category B by about 50%. Because I think a lot of category B is sort of being held up by the fact that they're constantly being lied to and manipulated by this class and cast of experts. Random guy, if actually, you can't do that, yeah. So, okay, why are they making it mandatory? Okay, the reason they're trying to make it mandatory is under the guise of, now there's two options. One, you go with the government line, which we're trying to make it mandatory to end the disease, to fight COVID, to eradicate COVID. We're trying to eradicate COVID and get back to normal. And I think there's an element of that. Then there's the other side that says they're trying to make it mandatory because it is a great way to stepping stone to making other things mandatory. And this is the vaccine passports. Is there definitely are bad people who say, and in the government, who basically see this for what it is. If you can force people to present private medical information in order to participate in the domestic economy, you've just taken a massive grab of power. And by this massive power grab, it lends more power to the government. So a lot of this is a power grab. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'll just put it. Autonomy. It's about autonomy in our own bodies and informed consent, informed side effects, long-term studies. Yeah, and I think people just want a bit more. And, you know, the long-term stuff, I think we get a lot more people say it is like, listen, here is the current data on COVID, and listen, these mRNA things, here's what they are. We think they're a valuable medical technology, but they're going to be lacking long-term research. This is your theory. And you know, the game that everyone has to play is, okay, I would say by the evidence is the current short term, we have about half a year of this, is there are very, very minimal short-term risks to the COVID vaccine. Now, are there potential long-term risks? Yes. Now, there's also very, very potentially low for someone like me, healthy, individual who's under 30 for now, getting there's very low short-term risk. However, there is some significant long-term risk is where the COVID long haulers, there is the potential for COVID to sort of stay with you. And we're not sure if you get COVID and you recover, like, yes, you might live. Let's say I'm 30, I get it. I might recover and live. But because of COVID, I might die at 67 instead of 87, right? Because my lung capacity might be reduced over my lifetime, making me more susceptible to diseases down the road. This is a potential. So it's that long-term thing offset by the risk of a long-term on the COVID vaccine. So that's the game theory in my mind. And it's also the game theory of, like, do you want to travel? Like, your parents are doctors. They're going to freak out if you don't get it. And then, like, your brother's going to have a baby later and he's in Yellowknife and you want to go see the baby. So fuck it. You'll just get it. Oh, damn, I swore. So, okay, video's demonetized. Demonetized. Getting an email from YouTube tomorrow of, like, what you did was not good for children. Sorry, YouTube. I apologize to the Chinese government. Sorry, the government of Western Taiwan. Okay. All right. Okay. So I think we're all on the same page as, like, and like, I think, if you're 65 and you're like, you have some underlying health conditions and, like, you have asthma, like, get the vaccine, like, get it, because, like, the long-term, whatever, like, I think that's your game theory. Like, I think absolutely think people who are 65 have some comorbidities, like, absolutely get this vaccine. Like, I think that the game theory on your end is, like, much more towards getting it. Now, it's different if you're 24 and you're, like, perfectly healthy and your cousin had pretty bad side effects from the Moderna thing and you just want to wait. Okay, fine. Like, go for it. Like, I'm not gonna hector a 24-year-old. But if you're 65 and you have some comorbidities, like, I probably should. Okay. Now, moving off this, let us get to the next story in I want to cover. Like, what should we go into next? We have Canada pushing totalitarianism. We have the Taiwan's not a country. I think we covered, I think we covered all the stories kind of in the first one. Like, the Liberals are trying to do a new hate speech bill that is much worse. But we covered that so much with Greg Wycliffe back in the day. You know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to support Erin O'Toole. Okay? I'm going to support Erin O'Toole this week. Now, yes, is Erin O'Toole suing me? Yes. Two people on Erin O'Toole's team, his campaign chair, Wally Solomon, and his National Director of Field Operations, David Parker, are both suing me in separate suits because they love freedom of speech, right? So I have every reason to hate Erin O'Toole. He pretends to be against cancel culture, then he cancels Derek Sloan, Jim Calaharos, and sues me, right? But we had two of the stupidest friggin' Erin O'Toole scandals this week. And I'm going to defend him because I hate stupidity more than I hate Erin O'Toole. Okay? Scandal number one is, and this is the bigger scandal because it's actually something. It's not an absolute nothing. It's like it's like 0.00001% of a story. It's that he hired a British consultant to help Boris Johnson win. Oh no, he hired a consultant to help him on his campaign who worked for Boris Johnson. Oh no. And the media was kind of like slam him like, so there's going to be this. Wait, what, hate speech bill? Okay, fine. I'll cover this later. Oh no, he's coming. He's hired a British person to work at his campaign. Oh no, how immoral! I thought he was a conservative. He wanted to hire Canadians. He guess he doesn't like Canadians. It's like, guys, come on. Do I really like the case that Erin O'Toole doesn't care about Canada because he hired a British guy, a foreign political operative who has history? And like Canada and Britain are pretty similar. Like this is former British Empire. Okay, it makes sense that he hired someone to that. Now, my problem with Erin O'Toole here, and I think Maxine Burney actually nailed this. He put a Twitter thing. It's like Erin O'Toole hires people, foreign officers, just tell him what to do because everything he says is so calculated and overproduced, right? Whereas I, Maxine Burney, speak from the heart. And I've been saying this for a while. The problem with the Conservative Party is, I'm going to put my favorite comment up. We'll just put that one up for a while. My problem with the Conservative Party is they are way too reliant on these focus groups and consultants. These are the people losing them elections. So it's not that, the Toronto Star slammed him because he hired someone foreign. The problem is he's hiring these idiots again. And I've said, if you hate the Conservative Party, if you hate them with malice and fury, the best way to destroy the Conservative Party of Canada is to donate money to the Conservative Party of Canada because they will use it to buy a gun, load it with bullets, point it at their foot, and pull the trigger. They're the best at shooting themselves in the foot. And the way they do this is they rely off flawed polling data and strategists, and they're totally overly contrived. And I was saying this, if you've been following for years, I've been saying there was a reason why Andrew Scheer sounded the exact same as Theresa May after he became the leader. Is because they're using the exact same polling groups and focus data to create this sort of overly produced political drivel that we consume, right? It doesn't sound human. That's my problem with the Conservative Party is. And a lot of these polling wizards, they rely on polls, created by liberals in the first place, to get their data. This is the reason why the Conservative Party is falling apart. It's not because they're hiring foreign people; it's because they're hiring these idiots to begin with, right? I would literally, if I was the leader of the Conservative Party, I would take everyone who said data, focus group, anyone who talked about a focus group, I would load them into a rocket and fly that rocket into the sun, and the Conservative Party would win the next election. I would. If you were to say focus group polling data to me as the Conservative Party leader, execute it. Like I would execute you on the street. When am I going, Lorna Thompson again? I don't know. I guess ask Laura Lynn when she invites me back, when we have something to talk about. So that's a problem. So that was scandal number one. Like, Erin O'Toole hates Canada. Scandal number two was even stupider. Okay, guys, if you're sit down because you might be blown away by the sheer vicious misogyny of Erin O'Toole, because Erin O'Toole went for a run this weekend, came back, and then his wife handed him a beer. And like Evan Solomon was like going crazy, digging into it. It's like, oh my God, he calls her the wife. The wife brought a cold one. What does this mean? The political messaging. Oh no. Do you know how stupid a story has to be for me to jump in and defend Erin O'Toole, the person who's literally conducting systematic lawfare against me and my family? Do you realize how stupid this story is? Erin O'Toole's wife gave him a beer. A beer! Oh no! Erin O'Toole got his wife to give him a beer. Maybe his wife loves him. What a scandal. Wife of Erin O'Toole loves him. And you know what? Good for Erin O'Toole. He showed a personality. The next day he came back and said after a run he got his wife a glass of wine. See, this is what I would talk about the Conservative Party. Like, this is the good part and the bad. Like, these two scandals kind of prove what I'm saying, right? Scandal number one, or non-scandal number one. You hired someone, a foreign consultant, to do data and crunch the numbers. And my thing here is, no, stop doing that. Stop going with the, the political theory nonsense. Everyone's so tired of this political junk. Speak authentically. Be human, right? Right? So then you see on scandal number 2, right? His wife hands him beer. The media explodes. He doesn't apologize. He makes fun of it. People see that as human. They like it, right? Erin O'Toole did something productive this week. Now, are those polling numbers going to tank again? Yes, because he hates conservatism, and he's going to just say, you know what? I've called my advisors, and they say we should do exactly what the liberals are doing, but then say we're going to stop the liberals from doing it, and then we're going to do it ourselves. And then I'll call everyone. Basically, I'm going to run as a conservative, build up a base that sees me as a real conservative who will fight back against all these liberal ideas and narratives. Then when I get in power, I'm going to push these ideas and narratives onto my base and then call them mouth breathers if they don't accept these ideas that I'm pushing on them that I promised to run against. And then his numbers will tank again. So am I hopeful that Erin O'Toole will turn it around and become the leader we need him to be? No. No. It will not happen. It will not happen. There's no chance. Right? But, right, it was nice to see that there was a moment of moderate personality from the fools of O'Toole's. So, okay, to go into the hate speech bill. Okay, I talked about this with Greta Wycliffe, but so there is Bill C-10, which we kind of know as sort of the censorship bill, putting the entire internet under the CRTC. We've talked ad nauseum about that. Even the conservative party's on it. By the way, please like and share the video. Any response helps you do it. This video is sponsored by me, Daniel Boardman. You can donate on PayPal or Patreon, and that helps me pay my legal fees and prove that that Erin O'Toole is up to no good. All right, now the new hate speech bill is sort of an all-encompassing bill that I'm going to try and push on us. Now, there is one legitimate strain to this new hate speech bill. Is it's trying to do a lot of things, and one of the things it's trying to do is sort of regulate internet pornography and revenge porn and sort of child pornography on the internet. So I'm all for this. Like, I do think Pornhub's a Canadian company, and Pornhub hosts way too much abusive child porn and rape stuff, and needs to be held accountable. Like, there needs to be some sort of vetting measure be put in place to stop child pornography. There's another problem that that I think all governments have and I think we'd say, like, listen, I think the argument that the founding fathers created the Second Amendment at the time of muskets and they couldn't anticipate real guns. Like, that's a silly argument. The founding fathers are pretty explicit that the right to bear arms is to counterbalance the potential tyranny of a state, and as the state's weaponry involves social citizenry, they are pretty open with that. But there are certain areas that the founding fathers of Confederation or America cannot have foreseen. And one of those is revenge porn, right? I don't think Sir John A. Macdonald or George Washington or Thomas Jefferson really knew what to do with the fact that, sometimes, people send each other sexy pictures on their phones, and then you break up, and one of the people in the relationship is evil, and they post these pictures without consent online, and this should be a crime. And what should we do about it? That's a very legitimate issue that I think should be addressed and pushed forward. However, this will usually is going to be the this is going to be the kernel of validity that the liberals are going to use to stop hate speech. So there's this all-encompassing bill that will deal with, like, internet pornography, hate speech, terrorism, and all these different things. And it's like, okay, if we want to deal with terrorism, one, I don't trust the Trudeau government to deal with terrorism because they had 3 ministers in the government that were part of the Khalistani movement. One minister is openly Muslim Brotherhood, or pretty strongly affiliated Muslim Brotherhood, doesn't think Hamas and Hezbollah are terrorist organizations, and advocated for Sharia law in Ontario. So I don't think they're taking the terrorism too seriously. Ralph Goodall took the Khalistanis off the terrorist list and had to rename it. So, I don't trust them when it comes to anti-terrorism legislation in the slightest. Do I think we need stronger anti-terrorism legislation? Stronger anti-terrorism enforcement. There's a few things, again, I could argue that we could add to our anti-terrorism bill. But, there's a lot in this new bill. So this is the new thing. So after C-10 might be defeated or not, there still is a massive hate speech and internet censorship going on. And listen, hate speech might be bad. There's someone might say, I think everyone in India is dumb and stupid and dirty, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's bad. That's mean, right? That's racist. Everyone in India is not like that. You shouldn't say that, Daniel. Okay, fair enough. There's a big difference between that and terrorism, right? There's a difference between me saying something mean about Indians and then me joining the Khalistani movement, going off to Pakistan, shooting an AK-47 in the air, talking about doing terrorist attacks, Gurwal's uncle, right? and then coming back. Or there's a difference between saying mean things about Indian people and blowing them up on an airplane, right? There's a difference there, right? They're not equivalencies, right? Both are bad, but one is significantly worse than the other. And this is all being put under the same umbrella. Okay. Now, let's go into the actual, hate speeching now, because I made this point before, but I'm gonna tell you for me why I just don't trust the left, why I don't give any credence to the left. Yeah, again, in the background to talk. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. It makes sense, like sticks and stones, but words. And then I think this next point might also, it will soon apply to Indians, and it's gonna apply to East Asians soon. But here's why I don't trust the left. Here's why I don't take them seriously when it comes to things like Black Lives Matter and where, St. George Floyd is systemic racism and you don't care about this and this and this and this and this. Currently, we're seeing a 428% spike in anti-Semitism. Israel. Okay, fine. I'm not saying criticism of the Israeli government is not anti-Semitism. However, usually people, when they are criticizing the Israeli government, are just saying random conspiracy theories about Jews and then claiming that it's criticism of the Israeli government. Right? So when you are not criticizing the Israeli government, just saying crazy things about Jews, you're usually being an anti-Semitic. Now, let's break down this conflict to just some very specific points. The founding charter of Hamas. Okay, Hamas is the organization that Israel is fighting. Okay, Article 7 of Hamas's charter talks about them wanting to take over the world, and in other parts, explicitly wanting to murder every single Jew on the planet. Now, the PA, the Palestinian Authority, which controls the West Bank, they currently have a pay-for-slay program where they pay people to hunt down and murder Jews, depending if you kill them or not, how you kill them, did you drive them, did you stab them in the throat, how many did you stab, where were they stabbed, there's a whole chart of how much money you can make. And they pay people to murder Jewish civilians, hunt down and murder Jews. Okay. So here's where we are, where there's a massive spike in hate crimes against Jews. And when you're on the left, and listen, you don't have to love Israel and blah, blah, blah. I hate forcing people in the Israel debate. But you have to acknowledge there is a group out there that wants to hunt down and murder every single Jew. Hamas, the PA, Hezbollah said this too. If you cannot condemn these organizations, if you then simp for these organizations and say, oh, this, and it's just this, but Israel, blah, 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 then sorry, you don't have a moral leg to stand on. Like, oh, George Floyd and blacks are being hunted by the cops, even though the statistics don't bear this out. Jews are literally hunted down in every part of the Arab world. They're all, like, millions of Jews were made refugees after 1948. That's why Israel exists. And there's actual organizations that will hunt down and murder Jews and pay people for them. Your tax dollars also pay for this. And the left can't condemn this. And the left accept this. They justify it. So I'm not going to take anyone seriously from a moral perspective who justifies the mass murder of Jews. Now, what makes this even more perverse is these are the same people lecturing you about Trump as a Nazi, right? Everyone's on the street. They're Nazis. Was there a racist at the anti-lockdown protest last week? Probably. A movement with thousands of people, not all those thousands of people are going to be angels. Were the majority white nationalists? No. Does the protest have anything to do with white nationalism? No. But the people who are screaming white nationalism, Nazi, 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 are literally silent as there's a wave of violent Jew hatred sweeping. And I've been saying this for years. Like, I've seen this wave coming. Just in New York, there was a Palestinian activist wearing the Palestine shirt. He attacked a Jew, not an Israeli settler, blah, blah, blah. He attacked a Jew because it's New York. It's catch and release. You get bailed out. No need for bail. You commit a violent crime. You're just sent back on the next day. Gets into the courtroom, says he was proud he did it. He would do it again. Attacked the Jew. Didn't deny it. Did it. Then there's a video of him coming back to his neighborhood and his friends and then celebrating him. They put him on his shoulders and they dance around him. New York. Not Gaza. New York. And this is the thing. And this is all, yes, it's like not standing up for Hindus, right? It's like not, Pakistan is crazy, right? And Hindus are not, like, it's the exact same thing with the, so you have him being celebrated. And you know what? I've had debates with the pro-Palestinian side, and they make this sort of cycle of violence argument. We excuse Islamic extremism because all Islamic extremism can be explained because, you know what, someone did something mean to him, that's why he became a terrorist, even though Islamic extremist terrorism is the only crime that actually becomes more likely the more educated you get. Again, corruption of our university system. So I understand the argument. I disagree with it. You know what? You stab a Jew in the throat. You're from Nablus. You cross into the border in Israel. You stab a Jew in the throat in the middle of Tel Aviv. You go to a jail, but the PA pays you and your family a lifelong salary because you murdered a Jew, right? Then Israel is forced to then go and demolish your family's home because that's the new rule, right? If the Palestinian government is going to pay people and their families to become terrorists, well, then Israel's going to knock their homes down. So there's at least some disincentive towards doing it. And then I've had the argument, well, if you knock those homes down, they're just going to hate you more and then be more inclined to do violence, and then you've created another terrorist. Maybe. But if that's the justification for why they're violent towards Jews, is they've been forced there by circumstances, why is there violence towards Jews in every part of the Western world right now by Palestinian activists? Why are Palestinian activists going into Jewish communities across the world? They did it here in Toronto. They went to the Jewish community. They did it in London. They don't go to the US embassy. They don't go to the Israeli embassy. They go to neighborhoods that are majority Jewish and harass them. Why are there violent attacks against Jews all across the world in the name of Palestine? And the answer is because the Palestinian movement is a genocidal anti-Semitic one. It is not about Palestinian self-determination. It never has been. Again, there was no such thing as Palestinian self-determination when they were under the control of Egypt and Jordan from 1948 to 1967. It was not until 1967 when Israel took the territories that even this conversation began to come up. The original founding charter of the PLO in 1964 explicitly states that the West Bank and Gaza are not part of the Palestinian territories. They explicitly state that the West Bank and Gaza are not Palestine. That is the current government of Palestine. It has always been about the destruction of Israel. And it's because of genocidal Jew hatred brought on by radical Islamic theology. I mean, look at it. I mean, the level of anti-Semitism they go to is insane. The now Palestinian government actively denies that the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock is built on top of a Jewish temple. And this is against Islamic doctrine even. The Quran and the Hadiths talk about the Temple of Solomon. The reason why Muhammad went there in a dream was to go to the Jewish temple. The name of Jerusalem, Al-Quds, comes from the Arabic root word, where the temple of the Jews is. Right? But they go through this denialism because the majority of the anti-Israel stuff is pure Jew hatred. Genocidal Jew hatred. Right? And then you have the left, which is perfectly fine with genocidal Jew hatred, but will call you a Nazi if you disagree with them. So this is why, and I'm saying it to you, this, and it's manifest on the streets in the last couple of weeks, but this is why I do not take anyone on the political left who can't condemn this. Now, there's some people who would say, oh, this anti-Semitism is bad, and we understand that it actually underlies part of the conflict. And when Hamas says we want to kill every Jew in the world, that actually means they want to kill every Jew in the world. We don't want them. But the left, for all their everyone's a Nazi who disagrees with me, are literal Nazi supporters. Will literally support the targeted mass murder and attacking of Jews. So this is why I don't think you have to take the left seriously when it comes to moral arguments. So I don't take them seriously. That's that. All right, I did think last thing is we'll go over Derek Sloan is likely starting a new party. It's actually historically accurate. It's darkly funny that a bunch of commies are siding with fascists. It's kind of how they've always been. I mean, you can go behind the Warsaw Pact. This has always been the way it is with the commies siding with the fascists. The anti-Israel movement, we all know that it's happened in the Soviet Union and the Arab world, but it was actually former Nazi propagandist Johann von Leers, who was Joseph Goebbels' right-hand man. Goebbels offed himself. But Johann von Leers actually went to Egypt, brought his team with him, and they worked under Gamal Abdel Nasser. So you had the Nazis continue the ideas of fascism, blended with the Egyptian state. Why does the Egyptian have a Nazi-like eagle on their flag? Oh, that's why. Right? And then they worked with the Soviet Union to create anti-Zionism. So the concept of anti-Zionism was actually created in Soviet universities with the combined propaganda of Egypt, which was run by Nazis, and the Soviet Union. So it actually, hatred of Jews has always been a uniting thing between the communists and the fascists. I like it. Yeah, the left's doctrine is my mind is made up. Don't confuse me with the facts. Exactly. All right. So it looks like Derek Sloan's going to start a new political party. And lots of people in the PPC are mad. I understand why. Now, I'll give some additional comments. So we wrote the article in the National Telegraph, basically predicting that Derek Sloan's going to start his own party. It makes sense. He's talking about starting a movement. A lot of people have been hearing the rumors. Now, PPC people, I understand the exasperation here. It's like, hey, we have a movement in the PPC that's growing. Why not just join the PPC? And the answer is because Max doesn't have a constitution. And we asked him this on TNT Live, like, hey, what was the constitution? And Maxime Bernier's answer essentially was, hey, we really focused on filling out our candidate base during the last election. We really wanted to just get them. And then a lot of people left after the candidates came in. And now we're trying to refill the infrastructure. Like, the problem with not having a constitution for the PPC is you will never attract conservative party candidates. They'll never defect to you. Okay? Because there is no party infrastructure and it's just right now the Maxime Bernier show. Now you might support Maxime Bernier. And I supported Maxime Bernier's libertarian nonsense. Like, another reason I outlined is like the PPC is pretty libertarian in a lot of policy. And that doesn't get a lot of people to vote for them. It gets me. That's why I was making pro Maxime Bernier videos back in 2017. But it's a hard mass appeal. Right? So there's that. But the problem with the PPC is there is no legitimate infrastructure. Like, people like Derek Sloan, or if you're going to get Pierre Poilievre, there's no way to defect to the PPC and then become the leader, right? Right now, it's sort of Maxime Bernier is entrenched in leadership. You know, you're never going to get someone like Sloan or Randy Hillier or anyone with another profile to join. It's just how politicians are, right? They're not going to join Maxime's movement. They would join another party, right? Bring their people in, as long as, you know, because then they have political infrastructure. They can set that political infrastructure up within your party and then have some sort of be a power player in the party. I mean, this is just how politics work. Because there is no internal infrastructure to go on in the PPC, it's just more of a movement than a political party. You're not going to get politicians defecting to it because then they just become sort of a part of this movement. And there's a lot of people who are pretty happy to be part of the PPC movement, right? Someone I like Mark Friesen, who's been on my show and I've talked to. And we talked about Udler before. You know, Mark's not a politician. He didn't run for politics, but he's not. He's a guy, he's an activist, he's trying to raise awareness. He's perfectly happy being part of a movement that spreads ideas. That's never going to attract a defector from the CPC. It's just not. Because it's not how politics work. Now, do I wish politicians were better? Yes. Is this any of my real personal opinions? Is Derek Sloan's party going to be better than Maxime Bernier's? We'll see. Right, but I'm saying the reason why Sloan is not defecting to the PPC is because there is no infrastructure for him to defect into and then set up his people inside. And it's just a measure of uncertainty. Like, Derek Sloan can just be kicked out again, right? There's no way he can say, like, okay, there's a constitution. I could build an EDA. You know, this would be my little fiefdom. I can help out in Ontario. I could become, if I bring the infrastructure to the PPC, you know, I would have this much X influence over Ontario and I can go in there and I could grow. There isn't really a mechanism for that. So it's likely that he'd rather start his own party. Now, if Derek Sloan just wants to make the new party the Derek Sloan show, it's going to have the exact same problem. No one's going to defect to it, okay? You're not going to be able to get defectors. Now, I actually do think it's fine that we're getting fractions on the right. This is standard Canadian politics, and I think long-term is actually fine, and it's actually better. And if I can alleviate the anxieties of the PPC people right now, listen, the PPC, we're not going to win the next election. We had a conversation with Maxime Bernier, and his goal is not to win. His goal is just to get more than 2% of the vote this time. So the PPC was not going to win anything. Right, the PPC's goal is essentially to stick it to the man, right, and to force the Conservative Party to be more conservative. I actually think we get there quicker with different parties on the right, because the problem with the PPC being the only anti-establishment party is you can get into the same method of the CPC. They just have to be 1% more anti-establishment than the last guy, right, and then they get all the anti-establishment vote, right? If there's sort of a competition in the anti-establishment sphere between, you know, Maverick, Derek Sloan's party, the PPC, right? All these different things. Then all these parties will eventually be forced to come together and unify, right? And then once those parties unify under one banner, and then you get the sort of the reform movement or reform party, you would actually have a much bigger party with a lot of infrastructure. You'd get the best of the PPC, the best of Sloan, the best of Maverick coming together, and you'd make a stronger, you know, actual Conservative Party. Then with a stronger actual Conservative Party, then you would force the CPC either to dissolve and join it and to reunify and shift further to the right. So if that's your ultimate goal, I actually do think creating more political parties will actually get us there faster. Listen, it means the PPC aren't going to pull off this magical upset in the next election that they weren't going to pull off to later. But thank you, Diane. There, so this is the problem with the PPC is it doesn't have infrastructure to defect into. Sloan needs to set up this infrastructure so he can have a lasting party. And I actually do think for everyone who's like on the PPC movement, having different, right-wing anti-establishment parties, it probably will force them to unite before not this election but the next one. And then if you have a united front, you'd be a lot stronger in forcing the CPC into actually being conservative again. So I do think the ultimate goals they're going for are actually better served long term by Derek Sloan making a new party. That's it. So let's I'm going to wind this one down. We'll go over some comments. I'm not going to read this one before reading it, but look at I teach at university. Good for you, Paul. And find the most progressive students that adopted most of their ideas simply because it's trendy political fashion. I would agree. I went to university. I agree with this. I support BLM, identity politics, critical race theory, socialism, pro-Palestine positions. All black negative metrics are because of racism, because being progressive is hip, cool, and the people are better looking. It's nothing to do with the morals or truths or what works. It's self-marketing, branding, and positioning that our PM has something, can't pull it up here. But I agree with that sentiment. I saw do I accept suggestive topic future videos? Yes. Bring suggestions. Is it a guarantee I'm going to do it? No, because this is my show. But yeah, you put comments up and I read them. It's more likely to influence me. But yes, to this point of like, I would agree with Paul. As he's been in university now. That's kind of what I learned in university. I saw is just like people adopting the default position. It has nothing really to do with morality. It's sort of these are where the facts go. And I think he brought up a really good point in sort of all, a big part of critical race theory is all inequity is caused by inequality, right? So every disparity is caused by inequality. And this goes to the anti-Semitism stuff. So this argument is the base of sort of the Democratic Party these days to the black vote, all right? Is what they're saying is, hey, blacks, whites make more than blacks. And the reasons why white makes more than blacks, twofold, right? Life is a zero-sum game, so they're stealing your wealth, but also racism. Racism causes you to be poor. Now, a sophisticated metric would say, well, Nigerian immigrants make more than white, so why is that? But let's just take it black, white, whatever. What they are trying to do is push the narrative that, all, hate crimes and racism equals poverty. Now, here comes the problem with the Jews and the Asians and now Indians. Who experiences the highest amount of hate crimes in our country, in every country? It's the Jews. Who makes more than the average white person? Jewish families, right? So if you're going to try and push the narrative that, racism causes poverty, the Jews present a big problem for you there. So do the East Asians, right? So then you have to say, well, the reason they're doing it is because they're, cheating the system. So this is when you bring in an age-old Jewish conspiracy that, oh, you know what? Yes, racism does equal poverty, but the Jews are gaining the system because the Zionist conspiracy, right? So you add in another level of evil Jewish conspiracy to maintain the fundamental of your hypothesis, which is racism breeds poverty, which is statistically untrue. All right. Global warming is being part of Agenda 21. Yeah, I mean, I've covered this in different parts, but yeah, this topic will come up. I've covered the UN and global warming. I don't do it as like, I usually try not to go into as like global warming as part of Agenda 21, because a lot of people do it that way. I try and be a bit heterodox and do my opinions on sort of, the catch-all phrase of global warming and how it works, because I don't, again, the global warming as part of Agenda 21 is what I say, it's a conspiracy of competence that I don't believe in. Not that, Agenda 21 isn't real, the UN isn't pushing on these things, and that, global warming is being misused to manipulate people and all these different things. I believe all of that is true, but I believe framing it in that way presents it as a conspiracy of competence, where I actually see all of this is happening and true, but it's actually a matter of incompetence. And here's why. So that's usually how I go about the issue. But yeah, that will come up later. Critical race theory rebrands Jim Crow laws. Yeah, it's inverted. Critical race theory, you call it racism. It's it is inverted racism. And the best example of this is the James Lindsay, Helen Procos, Peter Boghossian hoax studies, the grievance study hoaxes, is they literally took a chapter of Mein Kampf, reworded it with feminist jargon, and got it published. So if you take a chapter of Mein Kampf, change the German Aryan race for women and the Jews to men, you can get this peer-reviewed and loved by the academic world, and that's a real big problem. And critical race theory is the enemy of critical thinking. So yes, I would say that statement is correct. Yeah, you could say it's rebranded Jim Crow. Yeah, rebranding is a great way. I would say that I would call it inverted, but I think we're splitting hairs in definition there. So I'd agree with you, Sean. All right, so that's it for this week. Thank you so much to everyone who came by. Remember to like the video, subscribe if you're on YouTube, like the page if you're on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, go to the YouTube, like the, I'll probably be kicked off one of these platforms to go subscribe to the ball. I have a Twitter, same thing. Just you push the buttons on the internet. It helps me out. So the more buttons you push, the buttons to push, do that. And yeah, thank you everyone so much for being here. I'll be back next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat pace. This has been fun.